For 30 years, I thought I was suffering from severe tinnitus, a constant low-frequency sound that seemed to vibrate deep in my teeth. My doctors called it a neurological disorder. But then I read the archived conspiracy forums, the ones detailing the alleged black site experiments of the CIA's MKULTRA project, far from any official records, hidden deep in the Adirondack wilderness near Indian Lake. They weren't just experimenting with mind control in the 50s, they were tuning minds, trying to create human weapons. This sound, the hum that follows me everywhere, it's not a disorder, it's a signal. They used the woods to hide the lab, but they couldn't hide the echoes, the forgotten children, the memories that refuse to stay buried. Join me as I go back to Indian Lake, back to the source of my fragmented past, and back to the place where I believe I was once Subject 7. I don't remember my early childhood, not really. What I have are fragments, the overwhelming, suffocating scent of pine, and the color white, not the clean, bright white of snow, but the sickly, institutional white of old linoleum. And the buzzing. God, the buzzing. It's a low-frequency hum that sometimes surfaces when the house is silent, a sound I know isn't real, but that vibrates deep in my teeth. My adoptive parents always blamed my vivid imagination. My name is Sarah, and my life is built on facts, dates, documents, and confirmed histories. I'm an archivist, and order is my sanctuary. Until I found the archive blog. It was hidden deep in a defunct conspiracy forum titled The Indian Lake Project, Subject 7, and the White Room. I read the post late one night, fingers cold against the keyboard. The blogger, John, claimed his uncle found a metal box in the woods near Indian Lake, New York, containing evidence of a 1950s CIA mind control experiment on children, a secret offshoot of Project MKULTRA. John described sensory deprivation, pattern recognition tests, and induced anxieties, but it wasn't the government names that stopped my heart. It was a single phrase John quoted from a supposed document. All subjects exhibit a deep-seated aversion to high-pitched frequencies, yet demonstrate an unnerving affinity for the low-frequency hum used during the initial conditioning phases. My teeth started vibrating. I felt the buzz, faint but insistent, filling my skull. I told my boss I was taking a research trip. I drove north to Indian Lake, a place I'd never seen, but felt I knew intimately. The place was stunning, aggressively beautiful, all autumn fire and black water. But when I turned onto the remote logging road John had vaguely described, the beauty curdled into dread. The woods here didn't feel quiet. They felt silent, expectant. I found the clearing just as the blog post promised, a small, unnatural circle, too perfect for the chaos of the deep woods. A few rusted metal pipes protruded from the dirt, their ends jagged and hostile. Standing there, the pine scent was so strong it was dizzying. I closed my eyes and leaned against a rough-barked maple. And then, I didn't just smell the pine. I felt an impression of the structure that was once here. A low camouflaged bunker, thick steel doors, and the cold metallic smell of disinfectant. My breathing grew shallow. A sudden rush of auditory feedback hit me. Not the buzzing, but a whisper barely intelligible that seemed to come from the ground itself. I scrambled back to my car, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't get the key into the ignition. That night, the dreams weren't just dreams. They were vivid immediate sensory assaults. I was small. I was strapped into a chair. The white room was suffocating. I felt the electrodes cold against my temples, and the faces above me, blurred and terrible, were observing. I remember trying to scream, but the hum was too loud. It swallowed all sound, all resistance, all thought. The next day, I found the photograph. It was buried in the digital archives of the local historical society, a grainy mid-century snapshot of a missing girl named Clara Miller. The caption said she vanished in 1954. I pulled up one of the scanned images from John's now offline blog, a group of children blank-eyed, sitting in a row. There was Clara, unmistakable, her braids tied with pale ribbons, and next to her, almost obscured by shadow, was another small child. I zoomed in, adjusting the contrast until the image stabilized. The hair, wispy and light, the angle of the jaw, the shape of the ear. It was me, or the child I once was. I wasn't researching a conspiracy. I was researching my own disappearance. The buzzing returned then, sharper than ever, and I realized what it was: a specific frequency, a tuning note that was once used to stabilize or manipulate my brainwaves. The thought terrified me, yet I felt a strange compulsion to lean into it, to let it clear the fog of my fragmented memory. I drove back to the clearing at dusk. This time I didn't stop at the edge. I walked into the depression, placing my feet where the floor of the bunker would have been. I let the pine scent overwhelm me. I let the buzzing crescendo in my ears. I closed my eyes and willed myself to see. And the world snapped. The rustling leaves and distant highway noises vanished. The forest around me was overlaid with a translucent memory. The bunker walls, the heavy steel door, and a sickly yellow glow spilling from below ground. I opened my eyes, and the world was shimmering, unstable. Then I saw him, a tall man in a faded lab coat, his back to me, examining the pipes. He was a phantom, an echo, yet I could make out the embroidered initials on his pocket: Dr. R.T. Subject 7, he whispered, his voice thin and dry, turning his head. His face was a blur, a featureless void of white. You were the most compliant, the most receptive to the pattern. You remember the pattern, don't you, Sarah? He reached out a hand. I stumbled back, gasping, but the image didn't flinch. I felt a cold dread that went beyond fear, the dread of encountering a monster that created you. The vision flickered and dissolved. The man was gone. The buzzing faded back to the low, barely perceptible hum. I stood there, alone in the twilight, shaking. The Indian Lake Project was not just a historical secret. It was a time bomb buried in my own skull. They hadn't just experimented on me. They had installed something, a pattern, a trigger, and now, 50 years later, the place itself had tuned me back in. I am home now, but the hum is constant. I listen to it. I realize it's not just noise, it's information. I can almost make out the pattern now, the cadence of the frequency, and sometimes, when I touch the pine furniture in my apartment, I feel a tiny static charge, and I hear a faint, distant whisper that sounds like my own voice, small and pleading. The conspiracy is over, but the experiment continues, and I am the only subject left to document the results